I think circularity has gone down this rabbit hole a little bit of being a technology approach, that we're gonna like somehow connect people point to point. And for commercial construction, that is an absolute myth. Who's gonna do the work in the middle to get it from this building to this building? Is it the architect? Is it this architect? Is it the contractor? Who's doing it? And who's gonna stand behind and make a commitment that what you're gonna get from this building is what you actually need for this building? Someone's gotta do that. And that's where the opportunity is.
Andrew Ellsworth seems to have an incessant appetite for risk, but dig a little deeper and you see that that appetite is fueled by a profound desire to drive the positive changes that will support environmental health, and he's using the built environment as the entry point to create that change. In addition to launching Doors Unhinged, the first U.S. company to reclaim and resell commercial door systems, Andrew also co-founded the All4 Reuse initiative to strengthen the demand for reclaimed materials. He also recently collaborated with Hennepin County in Minnesota to develop Building Circularity MN, and as part of that program, he's leading a training to help entrepreneurs build viable material reuse businesses. And when he's not doing all of that, he still finds time to take to the stage, speaking and advocating for circularity and reuse, which is where I found him, between his multiple speaking sessions at the Build Reuse conference. In this episode, Andrew shares how Doors Unhinged came to be, the challenges of launching a business in a sector that wasn't designed for circularity, and where he sees the biggest opportunity for entrepreneurs in the circular economy.
I'm really interested in your story, so I wanted to know how Doors Unhinged came to be.
Throughout my career, I've been working in the built environment and sustainability. I'm trained as an architect, but I've always had an interest in kind of how we do a little more creative problem solving. So I was running a sustainable enterprise consulting business. One of the things we were doing was trying to find market-based solutions to environmental and social issues. For-profit companies that, as part of their business, can solve these problems that we have. So one of them I was like, all this construction waste in commercial buildings, it's so vast, it's so high quality, they happen so quickly. It's like, why can we not do something about this? And I sat down and I figured, I was like, well, the way we try it now is the wrong model. We need to build a business that's responsive to the needs of just the commercial building sector and not kind of try and be a catch-all. And from there, I started to evaluate. It's like, okay, if you're going to do that, you really need to specialize, because that's how the industry works. You have all these specialized subcontractors and suppliers that have tremendous knowledge and experience and access to a wider array of products than does, say, a Home Depot. And so I went and I kind of thought about, like, what are the right candidates for all the things we're trying to achieve, you know? It needs to be fairly modular. Its system needs to be not having a competitive secondary market. Like scrap metal is a hard place to start, right? Any metal products, because like the scrap stream is really well understood and really well used. It needs to come out, there needs to be large volumes of it, but most importantly, it needs to be of a decent value. It needs to have initial, fairly expensive kind of price tag, such that when you have margin, that when you take out the product, you're still selling it at a discount, that you can make money. So that, all those criteria kind of pared it down to 3 products: doors, lighting, and casework. Casework didn't really fit the modular part of it. Lighting, we were right at the moment where technology transfer was happening between fluorescent to LED. So what that means is everyone's getting rid of their fluorescent and everyone's buying LEDs. So you're gonna be stuck with a huge amount of material. So I kind of left doors, and I didn't have any special attachment to doors before that, so I just said, let's give it a shot. I didn't really know much about them, and I just kind of figured it out from there.
What was your kind of first entry? Did you just find one project and then just build upon it?
Yeah, exactly. I was working out of like an office in my attic, right? No pickup truck, no warehouse, no tools, no staff, and just started talking to people. And I called a developer one day that's just on the list of companies I researched. It's like, hey, we're doing this thing where we take doors out of buildings and sell them. And he's like, do you know any projects? He said, yes, I have one. It's starting next week. And that ended up being 100 doors or something like that, which is pretty ambitious to start with. But it was a good opportunity. We learned a tremendous amount, made lots of mistakes. But from that point, now we have a truckload of inventory and not knowing exactly what to do with it. So I rented a self-storage unit that was for a month or 2 months. Well, I kind of figured it out. It was like, I'll pile all the stuff, like, what is this stuff? How do you sell it? Started talking to architects and contractors, and that was a very long road, and got some early projects with some people that were ready to experiment and take a few more risks. And honestly, it just builds from there. And so your best case for being able to deliver on that project is previous projects that you've done. And once they see, we don't have to prove ourselves so much anymore because we have a reputation. But we really did early on. It's like, we're just constantly leveling up. And we started with 2 or 3 doors in a basement of a nonprofit. And then next we know we're working on a co-working space. And then, we're university, and it just keeps going. That's all it is, right? One foot in front of the other, one project at a time.
What a cool story. And do you do anything to the doors? Do you refurbish them, or?
Initially, we really only had 2 options. We had sort of as-is appearance, which is a pre-finished door, typically already has a stain and a top coat on them. They're very durable. And so we would do a little bit of touch-up, but that was essentially, it was what it was. The other option was called paint grade, where that's the lowest common denominator for making doors look the same, that you're going to do whatever and they get painted the same color. And so we figured out that our customers are not really that excited about, you can get some projects through those options, but what we needed to get to was the capability to have large quantities of doors come in that may be somewhat dissimilar, and then have kind of that same quantity going out looking the same. So what is the process that's in the middle? What is required to do that? And really spent the last couple years building that plan. So we're not fully launched yet, but we've secured a sander that will take the doors and just take the finish off them. The veneer is like a 1/40 of an inch thick. So it's like, we're kind of really threading a needle here to just take a few thousandths of finish off and leave this very, very thin veneer in place without burning through it, without leaving finish on. And so we've been able to accomplish that part of it. Finishing is a known quantity, but we still have to put all the pieces in place with that. We're going to be working with third-party partners, but they need to be able to create a product that meets our specifications, and so we had to create our specifications. We don't have the capabilities to do this in-house right now, so we kind of have different pieces of our business scattered in different places, which we ultimately hope to consolidate. So that's the kind of the long answer of, like, we do different things to them based on what the needs of the customer are, but we're trying to increase our capabilities to have a wider array of options that meet different customers, project types, and aesthetics.
What were some of the biggest challenges you encountered in the early days?
Status quo, really. Like, I'm sorry, we don't do that. Literally emails from architects saying, we don't work with reclaimed products, out of pure kind of bias or just kind of stuck in an old system. Mm-hmm. And we've been slowly chipping away at that perception that it's somehow inferior, that it's not going to work, that they're going to fall apart. And I mean, we continue to have to make the case for it. We've also recognized that to get onto project, like, you live and die by the projects that you get. So, like, you eat what you kill. You got to get out there and be a little pushy and have to kind of elbow your way into a process that was not designed to allow us in, and make the case for why they should change the process and include us. We got to give them certainty, right? We have to give them all the comfort level that this is not a risky proposition.
What are your biggest challenges now?
I would say scaling is going to require a bunch of different investments and commitments. So what we're trying to do is, with our refurbished door product, we're going to have a bigger plant. We want to work on bigger projects. So we're going to need more material. We're going to need bigger projects to work on. So everything just gets bigger, right? Our geography is bigger. We're going to need local partners. We're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we're targeting initially the East Coast. So that's like DC to Boston, which is a pretty big area. There's a lot of work happening throughout that region. But we can't be on the ground there because we're not there. So how do we get partners that help us get material out of buildings and get material into buildings, finding projects, sourcing material, putting material on trucks, increasing our warehousing capacity that we can take 1,000 doors at a time, which was, mind-blowing when we started this business in a self-storage unit, But we're at that point where those investments start to make sense. Heavy investments in equipment like we talked about, the sander, the finishing we want to bring in-house. So now we're going to need a facility that can accommodate all our needs and our growth needs as well. It's a puzzle, right? And so the challenge is really like making sure you have the right pieces and you're not doing too much of one thing at any given time. Can't overinvest in labor. I can't overinvest in inventory. I can't overinvest in equipment. I can't commit to projects that are too big that we can't deliver on them, right? Where you set these stretch goals that it's going to pull you a little farther, and it's a good bit of work. And it's going to be a little hairy, but you're going to make it, right? But if you overshoot and you don't get there, that does real reputational damage. So it's like the challenges is just like all these different little challenges, and how do you not let one how do you build it up incrementally so it's a strong foundation? It's
such a challenge in so many different sectors of business. And I read a while back, I think a post somewhere in an article that you maybe wrote about the idea of keeping reuse regional. And I know that you're a big proponent of helping incubate other reuse entrepreneurs in other cities. So what is the thought process behind keeping it regional? Do you still believe that?
I do, and I think you have to think about what the region really is, and that may depend on your product. But, we've gotten queries about working on the West Coast, and that doesn't really make sense for us to do that in Pittsburgh. Right? So the materials, the general case for regionality is the materials are big and heavy. There are large quantities of them. And so it's expensive to move them long distances. And the environmental benefit starts to shrink the more you're expending fossil fuels to kind of move them around the country. But to that extent, like we move building materials all over the place all the time. Train cars loaded with lumber coming from the Midwest or Canada. Use on boats coming from Europe and China. Like lots of things are made in Mexico, India. And so we're already moving lots of things. So we don't necessarily need to be super ideological about regions, but no, there's kind of like, there's a logical size to this market, and it has to do with how big is the market, what is the level, the size you need to get to that allows you to kind of hit critical mass. And Pittsburgh for us is not. We're starting to hit other regions, but the East Coast is going to have to be a part of that equation for us. It's going to depend on the product though. If you work on another product, what's your region? How far reach do you need to have to get the supply you need and to find the number of projects you need to thrive?
That makes sense, yeah. And I guess the local supply of whatever it is that you're getting?
Yeah, there's no formula to it though, right? It's like you have to find the thing that works in that region. And a lot of this industry works on relationships too. And so having relationships can be very local, they don't have to be, but they're stronger. And people like to continue to work with the same people over and over again.
It's a little easier, I think, having boots on the ground too, and you can see what's happening in your own community.
Yeah, yeah.
You seem like you're a big advocate for building reuse entrepreneurs. Why do you think this is so important to the circularity equation?
The difference between the residential market and the commercial market is the residential market has been heavy on a lot of homeowners and DIY people that are ready to kind of jump in and do the work, find a cool material, and they have the perfect place for it, and they're going to figure out how to get whatever done to it. They got to strip it, they got to refinish it, they got to fix it, and they're ready to do that. In the commercial sector, no one wants to do any of that. So they need outside partners to kind of solve these problems for them. So if it's not them, who is it? Right? It's not the architect. Right? The contractor doesn't want to do it. You have a really important place for these reuse partners and entrepreneurs that smooth out the process. The easier it is, the more likely they are to engage with you. And so how do we build their entrepreneurs' capacity to actually move this stuff? I think circularity has gone down this rabbit hole a little bit of being a technology approach, that we're going to like somehow connect people point to point. And for commercial construction, that is an absolute myth. Who's going to do the work in the middle to get it from this building to this building? Someone, right? Is it the architect? Is it this architect? Is it the contractor? Who's doing it? And who's going to stand behind and make a commitment that what you're going to get from this building is what you actually need for this building? Someone's got to do that. And that's where the opportunity is to, again, smooth out the process. Inventory is going to be really important. So you have a lot of choices, and you have a little more comfort level that, okay, if it doesn't work out exactly as we planned, it'll be close. So I can say we have 1,500 doors in inventory, and then customers like, okay, if I need 100 doors, that's pretty good, you know. But if you say, I only have 50, and they're like, what am I supposed to do about these other 50 doors if the 50 you have even work? That's all the role that the entrepreneur can play, is to make the process convenient, easy, affordable, predictable, scalable. And that's what's going to, I think, ultimately move the market, is those transactions and getting more of them, and everyone getting the comfort level that this can really work.
I love that. And there's so much opportunity in that. And then I think you raise an interesting point about the tech too. It's like you're already asking these people to embrace a relatively new concept of reuse, and then you layer potentially new tech on top of it, and I think they pump the brakes.
Well, there's going to be a place for tech, but I can consider it connective tissue, right? And you have to connect things, though, like in the skeleton. If there's no bones, we don't have enough bones right now to connect. We can't invest in technology when there's nothing to connect, right? And so I think that's just sort of been a mindset that like AI, you know, and like social media and apps are going to solve this problem for us. But ultimately, circular economy is a stuff problem. Who is handling the stuff? Where's the stuff going? How's it moving there? Who's turning it from this into that? Technology is not going to solve that part of it.
Why do you think even the best intentioned reuse projects fall short or fail?
The design process is one that starts in an opportunity for vision and big thinking and dreaming to an extent, that eventually winnows down to something that's a contract. And so the realities of like what actually has to happen come crushing in as the project is kind of getting ready to go out to bid. And so things that were like ambitions can just get jettisoned very quickly. I think it has to do with experience and knowing how to adapt the process. It's hard to do that the first time. You almost have to make the mistakes to be like, oh, that's how I should have done that. I didn't realize it was like this. Back then, we should have had this conversation about these things. And we see it all the time where something will come out to bid and they theoretically think Doors Unhinged is going to be involved, but never really worked on the process. So they're like, well, we created all these things in specs, and it comes to us like, we can't do this project. You didn't ask us. Like, it got to be very, very specific and very rigid, and it's not something that we could meet those specifications. Keeping that in mind throughout the process is really, really important. And just failure is just part of everything, you know? Like, that's how we learn. The real failure is to not try again and to not learn from it. And I think that is, unfortunately, the mindset is like, oh, we tried that, that didn't work, so we're not going to do it again. And we want more of a growth mindset that's like, let's try this a different way.
Sounds like a lot of this too is also bringing people in, like vendors, like you guys, early on in the process to have the conversations of what can be done.
And the only reason I can tell you about this is because of all the projects we've lost. And we lose more projects than we win. And that's just the nature of the business, and you should be prepared for that. And you have to have that self-reflection to be like, why didn't we get this project? And maybe you don't know, but it usually boils down to a few things, right? For us, cost, availability of product, again, status quo. They're like, oh, this sounds great, but we don't think our client's going to be satisfied with this, or something like that, you know? And there's still realities, but we're still chipping away at those kind of rationales.
Do you see more designers embracing reuse now?
In the last year and a half, I think reuse is really on the horizon for people now. Some people have been there before, but for I think the majority of designers, they're starting to see that in the distance, be like, huh, that's actually a real thing, which before it was like dreamland, you know? It just seemed so impractical. And now the more attention is paid to it, people are coming around to the idea. It's like, I guess we could do this. And so I think it's going to pick up steam. It's going to hit some roadblocks, you know, like everything. And everything has growing pains, every movement, you know, every business. And we're just going to have to stick with it, right? I think the biggest argument for it is projects and completed projects, because it gets hard to argue when you have 500 case studies versus 2, you know? And so the more work that gets done, the greater the confidence in the industry, and no one wants to be first, they want to be second, third, fourth, or fifth. So when we get all the firsts out of the way, people are going to line up behind it.
I think you and Simona Fisher just need to take your talk on tour, and because you get people fired up about reuse.
We try.
Yeah.
It's exciting. It's a really exciting time in the movement right now, and it's this conference and all the record number of attendees. I think it feels different this year, and so it's just great to be a part of it.